Hi, I'm RJ Barker. Welcome to my home. I'm just going to make this window small so I can see the YouTube thing. And in case anybody has any questions, I don't know how many people are here. Some people, hopefully. Anyway, welcome to my home. Hi, I'm RJ Barker. Oh, that's welcome noisy, isn't it? To my home. I'm just going to make this window small. Now it's gone away. So hopefully that's a bit better and less amateurish on my part. Although anybody who already knows me will expect nothing less. Yeah, I'm wearing a hat. I love this hat, and I thought let's make it a bit more formal. So formal wear for today. There's about a 20-second delay as well between me doing something and you seeing it, so that might be a bit weird. Anyway, I'm the author of this, which is Age of Assassins. That's my first book, kind of murder mystery type thing, and Blood of Assassins, with me actually on it. It is. Orbit say it isn't, but it totally is. And then the last one in that trilogy of books is King of Assassins. I was going to read from this because I always feel like it didn't get enough love because I didn't get really to read from it much at the time. But I did a Twitter poll and everyone was like, no, Bone Ships, RJ. So we'll be reading from the Bone Ships, which is this. This is the beautiful hardcover, which was done by Underreader Books. And it came with this lovely picture from Tom Parker, which I don't know if you can see that because I can't quite see the screen myself. But hopefully you can. I'm just holding it there. There. Anyway, I can't actually see what's going on because my computer's gone a bit peculiar. But anyway, hopefully you saw that. That's by Tom Parker, and there's lots of things in it. There's the ships and lots of beasties from the Bone Ships. All manner of strange things and stranger things coming in future books. But anyway, I'm going to read. Usually I start at the beginning, but I've done quite a lot of readings from this book recently, and they've all started with the first chapter. So I thought I'd skip on ahead a bit and read from something else. This is chapter 3. It's got a lovely picture here of one of the galabos, which they use in place of cannon on the ships. We thought that cannon might be a bit too close to history for it. I'll just place you in the book, which makes me sound very professional. I'll just place you in the book. We've met Joron Twiner, who is our hero, though he's not particularly heroic at this point, but he's on the spectrum. He's going that way towards heroism. And we've met Lucky Mayus. When we meet Joron, he's the captain of a black ship, which is basically a ship for the condemned. You're sent to die on it. And Lucky Mayus has taken his hat off him, which is his signifier of command, and put herself in command. He's in a bit of a sulk about that, to be honest with you, even though he didn't actually want it, and he's quite useless. And in chapter 3, which is called In the Shadow of the Black Ship, it's where they first go on to Tide Child, which is the ship. And I'm going to read you that, and I don't think it's particularly spoilery or anything, although I'm not a great believer in spoilers. And if you have any questions, just put them onto the YouTube channel and I will try and read them. I might even put my glasses on, which would be a real thrill for you. Anyway, In the Shadow of the Black Ship, chapter 3 of the Bone Ships. I'm trying to be really professional. It's just not in my nature. I'll probably mess this up. I always do, but that's part of the fun. Read, RJ, stop it. Black water, they called it. That greasy area where the detritus of a ship held the water that little tighter to it, a disturbance that caused a circular calm about the vessel. And this water was black in more than name. The reflected hull of Tide Child made rowing into the black water to approach an abyssal hole, like the places where the floor of the sea fell away beneath the ship and a deck child heard the sea hag's call to join her in the depths. 1 minute, Joron rode through limpid green sea where the pink sand gently shoaled away beneath them. And then they were in the cold shadow of the ship, rowing through darkness, towards darkness, life into death. There were rules in the 100 Isles Navy for a shipwife's approach. Shipwife is what they call a captain. Calls to be made, horns to be blown, clothes to be worn, and salutes to be offered. Lucky Mayus, perched on the beak of the flute boat, received none of this. Not even the careless courtesy of a ladder thrown over the ship's side greeted her. And though she said nothing, Joron could feel the affront radiating from every taut muscle of her body. When the fluke boat was in the span of Tidechild, she leapt from the beak of the boat. The sudden change in weight as she jumped, pushing it down into the black water, buoyancy pushing it back up in a fountain of white foam that tried and failed to follow Mayor Gilbrin up the side of the ship, where the water fell back, disturbing the bits of food and rotting rubbish, sending them bobbing away from the smooth black ribs of the hull. Maya seemed to defy gravity. She needed no ladder. The ship became her steps, each spike and sharp edge, each piece of the vessel that made him nervous. He knew they existed to take life, to ruin flesh, to end women and men, to grind them against the hull. She swung between them, booted feet finding purchase between the blades of the ship, hands knowing instinctively where to grasp without being cut. All this despite never having seen Tidechild before, never climbing his sheer sides, never inspecting the hull for rot or learning the curves and undulations of him. It did not matter to her. Joran's father had talked once of those who were born to the sea, and he had never really understood it, not until he saw her. In a moment she was over the rail and on the deck. Joran heard the thud of boots on the slate as he tied the fluke boat on. Then he heard the thud of a boot meeting a body. He climbed the ship quickly, but so much more carefully than she had. He heard the sound of voices, surprised voices, angry voices, and something in him trembled at it. He knew this crew, the 72 that rode Tidechild. Some had been there for years, some only for months, and there was not a one he would turn his back on without worrying they would draw a kerner on him. But she was fearless. Her shrike voice barking out, "Up, up, I'll have no slate layers on this ship now. Twiner may have feared himself of you, but I know no such thing. Last woman or man lying on the deck, a boot against a body, will feel the bite of a cord, a shout, something indeterminate. I care nothing that your skins were burned as you slept drunkenly under Skirith Sigh. You deserve those blisters. I'll give you worse if you do not obey." Joran came over the rail to find the crew, his crew, standing around, bewildered, as if they had been caught in the curse of the South Storm, the sudden squalls that come out of nowhere and wreck ships on the unseen rocks and reefs of the Lero Islands. And he shared that feeling. She was like a storm, a fury, like the mother had come among them to wreak her havoc and demand her justice. May strode to the rump of the ship, the slightly raised area at the rear where traditionally only officers and the oar-turner would stand. As she moved between poorly coiled mounds and tangles of rope, past the huge slack galabos, jumping a badly stacked pile of wingshot, she kicked out at those she passed. "Up, up," always shouting, "Off my deck, off the rump, unless you think yourself up to facing me." A kick, a punch, a whirlwind of noise and fury and bright colours amid the drab, hungover, eye-burned crew of Tidechild, who now stood slack and bleak as their fates, watching this woman who wore the two-tailed hat. That's what his captain or shipwife in their world wears. He wondered if any one of them gave a thought to him, if they wondered where he was or even if he lived. He thought it unlikely. And as he watched, standing by the rail between two great galabos, a little blood from a stinging cut on his foot stained the water at his feet, a slowly branching pattern of dark red against the grey slate of the deck. They had no interest in him, the crew. They had sometimes regarded him with interest when he returned to have the purse holder dole out the meagre amount of coin due to him as shipwife. Heads sometimes turned. Cold eyes had sometimes followed him as he went below to the shipwife's great cabin. In that great cabin was his chest, holding what meagre possessions he had, even more meagre than when he had come aboard, as what money he got was never enough to buy what he needed from the fisher village. Each time he left Tidechild, he'd been worried about that chest, thought he could not take it with him, as that would be to finally abdicate all authority, to say they had run from the black ship. But when he returned, he was almost frightened to approach it, in case he saw the hasp broken, as that would mean that his authority was gone. What authority? In the claustrophobic heat of long nights in his decrepit body, he had dreamed of that moment, the shattered lock, the quick knife to the kidneys and the blood upon the white bone board in the great cabin, the light finally fading as Tidechild claimed its due, passing his weary souls into the hands of the sea hag who waited for all. But the moment had never come, and each time he had seen that lock still in one place, he had felt sure, somehow, deep inside, that his small authority was intact. Only now, watching the reddened backs of what had been his crew, did he realise how wrong and foolish he had been. Sea chest was sacred to the deck childer even, and to meddle with one was to was one of many small superstitions, like throwing paint on a dock or on the spine base, that was never to be broken. They paid him no mind as he stood and gently bled. But they could not take their eyes from her as she paced back and forth like a caged animal. There was that unmistakable fury to her, something internal, a roaring fire that was not seen, only sensed through the strict movements of her legs, of her arms, the glare of her eye as she surveyed the state of the deck, kicking at loose bottles and old rope, her mouth moving as she paced, rehearsing the words she would cast at the crew, the feathers in her grey and blue and red hair glinting like lightning in a far-off storm. As she paced, he realised that apart from the few he considered an obvious threat, he had lied to himself about this crew. He did not know them. He did not recognise them from their eye-burned backs. They were not his and never had been. When he looked at them, at the myriad different coloured skins and shapes of the 100 Isles, he had no clue what names those skins clothed. Even those whose faces he saw as they emerged blinking and confused from below deck, he could not name as they squinted and wondered about the sudden and tempestuous change in the winds that had blown into their lives. He did not know them at all. Where she invited their gaze upon the stage of the rump, he had avoided it. Where he had quailed and hunched and scurried past disinterested eyes, she demanded they look upon her, and they did. They could do nothing else. He could do nothing else. John started to count them, gave up and guessed the entire crew must be present. He saw the courser slinking around the edge of the grove in their grubby patched and holed robe. Damn him, he should at least know their name. He had known it. What was it? A Larry? A Lerrit? A Larin? That was it, a Larin. But the courser was one of the other that made him uncomfortable. They were neither woman nor man. He regarded them with the same sort of superstitious dread that came upon him when he thought about the Ghalame, the wind talker, stranded far out on the bellbuoy. You stink, said Mace quietly. You hear that? You stink, and it shames you. From the lowest fisher in a flute boat to the crew of the mighty Arachesian Dread. The deck children of the 100 Isles are clean. We're no raiders, no gaunt islanders to wallow in our own filth and fly ships that can be smelled before they breach the horizon. We have pride. Her eyes pricked at the crowd, making feet shuffle, heads bow, and yet you stink. Who are you to tell us this? The speaker was hidden in the crowd, but at least that was one voice he knew, old Briarette. The woman was as taut as rope and had been condemned in youth, hardly knowing any other life than Tide Child, so she knew little of the world outside it. Only to her could the identity of the woman on the rump be a mystery. They call me Lucky Mayus. Not that lucky then, said Briarette, if you're sent here to join the dead. Mayus seemed to grow, to straighten, as if what should be shame was a mark of pride. I am Mayus Gilbrin. I broke the Gaunt Islands fleet at Keelhume Sounding. I took the forerib of Burns Woe with only a handful of flute boats. I am firstborn of 13-bird Gilbrin, who leads us all, losing my voice. He heard the whisper at that, like the hiss of a wave on shingle. Firstborn, curseborn, firstborn, curseborn. And so did she. I hold no curse, for I am chosen of the sea, and it washed me ashore as a babe when raiders wrecked around me. I hear the whispers of all storms, north, south, east, and west, and I am favoured by the goddess of the young, the goddess of the people, and the dark goddess of the depths. Maiden, mother, and hag listen when I talk. She stopped then, royal, regal, ruler of the ship, and she dared any to say otherwise. When she spoke next, she sent her words into a stillness as profound and full as any becalming. You will find, and I believe, that the hag sends me where I am needed. She looked around the ship, at the filth, at the resentful faces, and lastly at him, at Joran Twiner. And hag knows I am needed here, sorely needed. I'm going to stop there, because I'm always really wary about reading loads of stuff in case people get bored. I don't know if you have any questions, you can put them on YouTube. If you're asking them, I can't see them, so I don't know. Or maybe I might go back and read a little bit more, or I might have the twigs that I did actually talk about on Twitter. Where was I? Shall I read on a little bit? Because we do have people watching. I can see them all, but you seem very shy. Don't be shy. Or if I can't see questions on YouTube, but you're asking them, you can ask them to me on Twitter and I'll probably see them. She was needed there. There was a moment when Joram waited for the challenge. It felt like someone should turn the glass at the rump so the sand could pour and time could be seen to pass, but none did, and no challenge came. He picked out the ones most likely. Barley, a woman as huge as any and flanked by two of her cronies. Quell, leaning on a rail, looking alone as always, and as thin, lithe and dangerous as any long thress. But she had her followers too. Then there was Canvey, surrounded by his boys, standing on the other side, and it was him that Joram feared most, for he was a predatory man. And more than once he had found Canvey's eye travelling up the curve of his calf, and the man's open lust scared him. But for now they were stilled, shocked by the onslaught of Lucky May's contempt. Clean this deck, she said. Coil the rope, stack the shot and tie down the gallows. Get Tide Child ready to fly and fight, for that is what we will be doing. Make no mistake about it. And I know you are a rough lot, so when the time comes, her eyes roved around, settled on Canvey, settled on Quell, settled on Barley, that you feel the need to test me, then do it like deck children. Do it to my face. She rested a hand on the hilt of a sword. Because the burn sought to give me to the ships as a light when I was a babe, even after the sea returned me. And in the ceremony, the mother came upon them and she said, I would not die then as a sacrifice, and I would not die in treachery, you hear? She said, I'd die fighting. So unless you question the will of the maiden or the mother or the hag, you'll pull your blade to my face, eh? Again, her roving eye, her fierce bird of prey features, waiting for a reply that never came. Only silence faced her. Well, to it then, move. And they did. And inside Joram, something twisted as he learned, in a moment of shock and revelation, how much he desired what she had. That easy command, the way she barely seemed to feel the weight of the two-tailed hat on her head. Twiner, she spat on the deck. Come with me to the great cabin. No. This from Barley. The woman stepped forward. Flecks of skin had caught in the blue dye of her short hair, her cheeks pale as ice and her eyes almost hidden within the round of her face. From a pocket in her deck trough, she took out a crumpled black object and held it up. Order us to clean the ship. Well, you wear the two tails and few are more worthy, so it is your right. But you'll not take that, she pointed at Joram. To the great cabin like he is your second. She unfolded a black rag, the one-tailed hat of the deck keeper, second in command on the deck of a bone ship. And she placed it on her head. It barely fitted, just perched on the crown, looking ridiculous, and only waiting for a stiff wind to snatch it away. He wants my place. You must take it. A shiver of fear down him, like cold sea making its way inside a heavy stinker coat, freezing him all the way to his bones. I want your place, said Mayas, stepping down from the rump, and I want him for my own reasons, and I do not need to share them. A circle began to grow about the two women. So I will take the hat from you for my own reasons, and I do not need to share them either. Barley's hand went to the kernow at her side, and May shook her head. No, no, my lass. Strong girl like you has no need of a sword. I'm a slip of a thing, and sure you could squeeze a life from me without too much trouble, eh? Barley eyed her, suspicious but unable to disagree, and she nodded. But think this, lass. You won that hat through strength, eh? But your accent says you're from Glenhume, where they breed for strength and naught else. So, lass, how are your numbers, eh? Mayas crouched by the rump spine, dipped a hand for luck into the pot of red paint at the bottom, finding it almost dry. Then she spattered what paint she found on the deck to join the lines and dots already there and stood, touching her fingers to her face, leaving red dots on her cheeks and stepping forward. How is your hand for holding a quill and taking my notes, eh? May stepped forward again, and what Joram saw seemed impossible. Barley, huge, frightened Barley, to take a step back. It was as if each of Mace's words was a lash of the whip. Strength is what is needed for a ship, naught else, said Barley. Now she stepped forward, pulling herself up so she towered over Mace. The shipwife did not answer, did not waver. How do you calculate the quickest course between islands, eh, lass? How do you understand the courser's notes? How do you steer when you cannot see Scarith's eye? How do you read the map and know the reefs? How close can you travel to Scarith's spine without losing the wind? Each word a fist that battered Barley back once more. But John could feel the woman's building anger the same way he felt a storm on his skin, could see it in the red of her face, usually as pale as his was dark. How do you? Barley moved, running forward with a scream of rage. Great meaty fists swinging, Mace ducked, sidestepped and kicked out, sending the bigger woman sprawling on the deck. From there, she was on her. straddling her back, using a slight weight to twist a massive arm back and push it against the joint until Barley was silenced. Her anger reduced to grunts of agony. Mace leaned over, her hiss loud enough for all to hear. I see in you, Barley, a strength I will sore need at the steering oar, you hear? I see a place by me on the rump, you hear, but I do not see you wearing that hat, eh? Hag take you, screeched Barley. Hag take you, Mace Gilbring, you take the storm-cursed hat then. And Mace did, picking it from where it had fallen on the deck and standing, walking away without looking back as if she were not worried that the bigger woman might attack again. As she passed him, she threw him the hat. The great cabin Joran would be quick, or Mace pointed at the hat limp in his hand. She may want that back. And that's how chapter 3 ends. Properly, I'm losing my voice now. I still can't see any comments, but I don't actually use YouTube, so they might be there and I just can't see them. So I'm just going to check in case somebody else can show them to me. I'm just going to check on Twitter as well. Oh, hang on. I was playing a video game. Better make that go away. People liking my hat. That's important, I think. Probably the most important thing. I have had a question about the Tunia, which show up in the book, and I'm thinking if I can answer it without doing any spoilers, which is harder than you imagine for a lot of stuff. Oh, I found the chat. Hang on. I was looking in the wrong place. There are people making fun of the fact that I may possibly have turned up at 10 a.m. for this, which a misunderstanding in a long line of that. I was turned up to the wrong town, so let's not. It's very, very disturbing seeing yourself in the past up there. Yeah, of course, I'm wearing a hat. Phil, hello, Mr. Clark. Hello, Swordsmith. Oh, hello. Stephen just needs to read my books. Well, I think you should read my books too, Stephen. I might have some slight bias there, but hey. Yeah, Tom's art is amazing. I don't know if he's watching this or not. He's probably not, because there'd be very sarcastic comments there from Tom if he was watching this. Matthew says, what led to the idea of a black ship? I kind of just like the idea of people who were destined to die, really, who had no hope, being given hope. Because I think one of the themes in what I write is forgiveness and finding hope and finding your way forward in the world when maybe you think you don't have it. Because I think we all need that little light, even though I write about very grim worlds. So there was that, and also the fact that these ships are made of bone. And obviously they'd be white. Well, they wouldn't be white. They'd be kind of an off yellow color, but that's not quite as romantic to describe massive off yellow. They looked a bit like it was wee colored. That doesn't really work for the romance of the sea, to be honest with you. So it was there. The bone ships, the fleet bone ships, the ones that are good, are very white, and they're kept white and polished and lovely. So it seemed if you were the opposite of that, your ship would be black, which made sense to me. Doot says, more please. There will be more. There will be I'm trying to think how many more books. There's 2 more books. I finished the second one. That's all edited. I should get what's called proofs next week, which is when you get something that looks like the actual book and you have to try and find any mistakes that have been missed in it. And you never do. There's some always make it through. In fact, I found one while I was reading, which is quite annoying, but I'm not telling you what it is. And then hopefully you won't know. Read on. Yes, I did. And the Swordsmith, he wants to know what led to the idea of a bone ship and thinks the concept is so cool. Thank you ever so much. So do I. It was, I love the fiction of the sea, like Patrick O'Brien and C.S. Forrester, that sort of thing, Moby Dick, all the classics. And like a lot of fantasy, you come up with an idea. I want to try about ships, and then you remove something to force your imagination to look into a different way. So I thought, right, how can we do big ships, but in a world where there is no wood? Because there's no wood in it at all. There are big plants, but they're they're more like massive succulents, I suppose, or palms, but they grow up very quickly and then die back very quickly. They're not actually much use. So there is a tradition of using bone. Neolithic man used bone tools. Scrimshaw, of course, in the neighborhood would carve on bone and teeth, whale teeth and stuff like that. So that seemed like an obvious go-to. And then obviously, if you built a ship out of little bits of bone, it would be very weak. So I started thinking we need big bone. And then I went to the British Museum where they have a skeleton of a whale. And I thought, oh, look, they're big bones. So that was where kind of it's all right, dragons. And one of the things about writing about the sea is that the sea is a terrible and unforgiving force of nature that will destroy you without thinking, and it does not hate you or like you. It has no feelings about you. It's just very, very dangerous. And I wanted something that was like that, so that these massive dragons are actually more like kaiju, really. And do they know that anybody's there? Possibly not. We don't really know. And I wanted that sort of feeling. So the dragon in it is really an avatar of the sea, in my way of thinking of it. Gosh, that sounds serious, doesn't it? It's very rare that I'm serious. I'll probably just making it up. I'll give a different answer tomorrow. Is it Dool or Doot? Doot, I think. Who did you have more sympathy for when writing? Girton, the active learner, or Joron, who was more reluctant? When writing it, you feel for the character who you are writing, because you I always call it quite pretentiously method writing, in that I try and be in the character's head, and I'm writing things they see. Girton was a lot easier to write because it's first person, and in some ways his personality is nearer to mine. I'm not that sulky. He's obviously, you can tell I'm not sulky at all. Where does all the dark stuff in my stories come from? I don't know. It must be quite upsetting for people who think they know me. But I have a lot of sympathy for Joron, because I understand why he is the way he is. And he starts off with a terrible burden that you don't know about, and you find out why he is. And also, for those that don't know, I'm chronically ill. I'm very poorly, and my health goes up and down because that's the way of things. I don't need sympathy for that. It's just, it is what it is, and I don't particularly like sympathy. Don't need it. Well, I'm quite happy. I'm incredibly fortunate to be doing what I'm doing. And part of Joron's story is his terror of the dissolution of his body. He's terrified of that. He talks about being ground beneath the ships, between them, like his father was, and he's terrified of battle, and he's terrified of being hurt and damaged, and that's sort of me talking about being physically ill in a different way. So I've got a lot of sympathy for Joron because of that. I'd probably choose to spend time with Girton if I had to choose one of them, because I think he's probably funnier. Joron's a bit of a, well, he's got a sad sack, really, isn't he? Right, hang on. Oh, it's been going a bit quick. Ed Fortune, nice. You're perfectly lovely, Ed. I know you quite well. You're a lovely man. Phil Lunt, would Lucky Mace prefer chocolate limes or blackcurrant licorice sweets? I don't think she would have any truck with sweets. If I'm honest with you, I think she'd be like, no, you have your sweets. It's weak. Sweets are for the weak. She'd probably be like proper licorice with no sugar in it that makes you go like that, I imagine, because she's not given to looking like she's giving in. C.M. Clark would like to say, like, I'm going for a drink. It's not alcohol. I know it sounds like I'm drunk, but I'm always like this. C.M. Clark, how long does it take to write a novel? Well, that is a question, isn't it? Age of Assassins, this. Oh, sorry, I just upset the cat. He's asleep underneath you. This took 6 weeks. It happened once. It's never happened again. Come back to the illness again. I was on a very strong course of steroids. So I had a lot of energy. And the whole book came into my head as more or less one idea. And I sat and I wrote it. And it's not changed a massive amount since I wrote it. And then the next two took, I think Blood of Assassins took 3 months, and then King of Assassins took 4, maybe 5 months. But they were much easier books to write because Gerton's voice is very easy for me to do. It just works. Where the Bone Ships, I think this one took 6 months to do, because it's a different voice. It's got that kind of repetitive lyrical feel. Hopefully, you might not have. I might be talking rubbish, but that's what I was intending, and it's more of a mannered and deliberate bit of writing than the Assassin. The Assassin book's just me writing in a very natural way for me. And then the second one, Call of the Bone Ships, which is done, took about 10 months to write that book, and because it takes longer for the second one because I have to keep referring back and making sure I've got the world right and some of the names in it. Oh my God, there are so many ships with so many names. I wish I could just call them all thingy. And then I'm very near to finishing the third book, which I'm not going to tell you the title of because my editor will tell me off. She'll send me a RJ, what were you doing? Email tomorrow morning. She wouldn't actually, because she's lovely. She'd just laugh at me. That's, I think, it's taken nearly a year so far. And it's been, I won't say a struggle, but it's been the hardest thing I've written so far because I'm trying to tie up all these things. It's really weird how, I was trying to explain this to somebody. These books are very plot intensive. They're whodunits, so there's a lot going on. And there's red herrings, and you're looking one way and making it look other ways. There's lots of stuff happening, but this is very, very linear. There's kind of really one thread running through it all. And for a lot of the book, I really want to say nothing happens. There is static places in the book quite deliberately, which I wanted to do. So, and really, really weirdly, because there's less happening, it's harder to write, which the human brain, go figure. Anyway, right. T.O. Monroe, hello. You love O'Brien and Forrester. Wow, they got me into writing. Rather shocking. They're just beautiful. And if you know O'Brien, then you'll know what I mean when I say never debauch as sloth. And James and Theo are now just laughing at each other. I mean, to be honest, how can Theo not know that I love O'Brien and Forrester? Possibly because sensible people don't listen to a word I say because I just talk rubbish 99% of the time. Occasionally there's something useful in there, but it's like finding a needle in a haystack, to be honest with you. We're going to start wrapping this up and prepare for the next reading happening soon. Thank you. I've had a really good time. Once I found the comments and I could answer them. Bye-bye, say hello on Twitter. And I'm not quite sure how I end it. I'm sure it'll just end. I could start reading what I was going to read you, and I presume it'll just switch off if I start reading King of Assassins.